Jack Miller adjusted his uniform collar for the 5th time in as many minutes. The air on Harmony Point Station was too dry for human comfort, and the gravity settings were always just a little off. But that was the least of his problems today. "Ambassador Miller, the Voxtari delegation is entering the chamber now," whispered Heather Ross, his diplomatic assistant. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and worry lines creased her forehead. "Remember what I told you?" Jack said quietly. "No sudden movements. They see it as a sign of aggression." Heather nodded, clutching her datapad tightly against her chest. After 5 years of humanity being part of the Galactic Council, humans were still learning the complicated dance of interspecies diplomacy. The doors to the chamber slid open with a soft hiss. The Voxtari entered in formation, their scaled bodies gleaming under the artificial lights. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with prominent ridges along their skulls. Their ambassador, Kreznar, led the group with his head held high, 4-fingered hands clasped before him. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," Kreznar said, his universal translator giving his voice a metallic quality. "We acknowledge your presence at these negotiations." Jack stepped forward and bowed slightly. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we welcome the chance to discuss trade rights in the Orion sector." The Voxtari made a sound that their translators didn't catch, something between a snort and a hiss. Jack had learned it was their version of dismissive laughter. "Please be seated," said the Olenthak mediator. The Olenthak were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, small blue-skinned beings with 6 eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once. This one's name was Beltik, and he had been assigned to oversee the negotiations. As everyone took their places around the circular table, Jack noticed the seating arrangement had been changed. Again, humans were now placed in the lowest position, farthest from the mediator. "We will begin with the Centauri trade routes," Beltik announced, activating the holographic display in the center of the table. Jack cleared his throat. "Excuse me, but according to the agenda we agreed upon yesterday, we were to start with the Mars-Vega shipping lanes. That was the primary." "The agenda has been modified," interrupted Kreznar. "The Voxtari have more pressing concerns regarding the Centauri routes." "Without consulting us?" Jack asked, keeping his voice level. "Those shipping lanes are vital to Earth's economy. We've been waiting 3 months for this meeting." The Olenthak mediator waved a dismissive hand. "Earth's needs are noted, but the Voxtari Empire spans 17 systems. Their concerns take priority." Heather tapped Jack's arm and showed him something on her datapad. He frowned at the information. "I see the Voxtari have already begun establishing checkpoints in the Mars-Vega lane," Jack said. "Those actions violate Section 47 of the Council Charter." "A temporary security measure," Kreznar said without looking at Jack. "Now about the Centauri routes. We need to address this violation first," Jack insisted. "Those checkpoints are already taxing human vessels." The Voxtari ambassador turned to the Olenthak mediator. "The humans are new to space. They do not understand the complexities of galactic security. Perhaps they should observe these proceedings, rather than participate." Jack felt his face grow warm. "We understand perfectly well what's happening. You're using these negotiations as cover while you establish illegal control over our primary trade route." "Ambassador Miller," the Olenthak mediator said with obvious annoyance, "your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. The Voxtari have been managing interstellar security for millennia. Please defer to their expertise." For the next 3 hours, the pattern continued. Every time Jack tried to speak, he was interrupted, talked over, or simply ignored. The Voxtari and the other alien delegations discussed the fate of human trade routes, as if no humans were present. Whenever he raised an objection, the mediator would acknowledge it with a dismissive gesture and then move on. Heather kept careful notes, occasionally sliding her datapad over to show Jack new information. More Voxtari ships entering human space, more checkpoints being established, more taxes being levied on Earth vessels. It was a coordinated takeover happening in real time, while they sat helplessly in this meeting. "We need to establish a human presence in the following sectors," Jack said, standing up and walking to the holographic display. He reached out to highlight several key points in the trade route. Kreznar made a sharp clicking sound. Do not touch the display, human. Your permission to access the map has not been granted. I need to show you exactly where. Return to your seat, the Olmthak mediator said firmly. The Voxtari will decide where your ships may travel. Jack remained standing. The Galactic Charter gives each member species equal rights to. Equal rights must be earned, said another delegate, a Fenari with translucent skin. Your species is still proving its worth to the galactic community. Jack took a deep breath. We've been trying to do exactly that for 5 years while being constantly patronized and undermined. Your emotional outbursts only prove our point, Kresnar said, mandibles clicking in amusement. Perhaps humans are not ready for the responsibilities of full council membership. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement from the other delegations. Jack looked around the room, seeing 12 different species and not a single ally among them. Earth was alone, just as it had been since first contact. Humans were seen as the primitive newcomers, their homeworld's gravity too low to produce properly strong beings, their civilization too young to be taken seriously. Jack glanced at Heather, who looked back with resignation. They'd been through this many times before. Usually they would back down, accept whatever scraps were offered, and try again later. But not today. Something inside Jack had finally reached its limit. He stood perfectly still, lowered his voice, and said very clearly, I'm getting seriously annoyed now. The effect was immediate and startling. The chamber fell completely silent. The Olmthak mediator's 6 eyes all widened at once, focusing directly on Jack. The Voxtari delegation froze in place, their breathing suddenly shallow and controlled. Did the human just... One of the junior delegates whispered. Beltik, the Olmthak mediator, suddenly seemed very attentive. Ambassador Miller, perhaps we have been hasty. Please share your concerns about the Mars-Vega shipping lane. Kresnar, who had been dismissive moments before, now turned his full attention to Jack. Yes, the Voxtari are willing to reconsider our checkpoint positions. We meant no disrespect to Earth. Jack exchanged a confused glance with Heather. What had just happened? All I want is for us to follow the agreed agenda and discuss the shipping lanes fairly, Jack said, still standing. Of course, the Olmthak mediator said quickly. The original agenda will be restored immediately. Voxtari checkpoints will be reduced to observation posts only, with no taxation authority. Is this acceptable? Jack blinked in surprise. Yes, that would be a good start. Excellent, Beltik said, sounding relieved. Now please share your proposal for the Mars-Vega route. We are all very interested to hear the human perspective. As Jack began outlining the Earth position, he noticed the entire room watching him with a new intensity. The beings that had ignored him for hours now hung on his every word. Even the Voxtari were nodding along, their previous arrogance completely gone. When the meeting ended 2 hours later, Earth had secured everything it wanted and more. The other delegations practically fell over themselves agreeing to human terms. As they left the chamber, Heather grabbed Jack's arm. What did you do in there? She whispered. Jack shook his head, just as confused as she was. I have no idea. All I said was that I was getting annoyed. Well, whatever it was, it worked. I've never seen the Voxtari back down like that. As they walked through the station corridor, they passed a group of Olmthak officials speaking quietly among themselves. Jack caught only a fragment of their conversation. Just like the Mars incident 30 years ago. They don't even know what they're capable of, warned the others. No species ignores a human when they say those words. Jack and Heather exchanged puzzled looks but kept walking. Whatever had happened in that meeting room, it seemed humanity had accidentally stumbled upon some kind of interstellar respect. The question was, why? Dr. Alan Wright wiped dust from his glasses and looked out across the red Martian landscape. The research outpost had been his home for nearly 2 years now. It wasn't much to look at, just a cluster of domes and tunnels carved into the side of Olympus Mons, but it represented humanity's first permanent settlement beyond Earth. Dr. Wright, you should come see this, called Susan Bell from the communications dome. Her voice crackled through his helmet radio. On my way, he replied, turning away from the viewing port. Whatever Susan wanted him to see, it had to be important. She wasn't the type to call him away from his work for nothing. When he entered the comm dome 5 minutes later, he found Susan and 3 other researchers huddled around the main screen. Their faces showed a mix of shock and wonder. "What's happening?" Alan asked, pulling off his helmet. Susan pointed at the screen. "We're picking up something big entering Mars orbit, and it's not one of ours." The radar display showed an object at least 3 times the size of anything humans had ever put in space. It moved with purpose, slowing as it approached Martian. "Orbit. Have you contacted Earth?" Alan asked. "Trying to," said Greg Porter, their communications specialist. "But there's some kind of interference. We can't get a signal through." Alan nodded, trying to stay calm. First contact. After all the speculation, all the searching, aliens had found them before humans had found aliens. And they had come to Mars, not Earth. "Let's follow protocol," he said. "No aggressive actions. We maintain open communications and show peaceful intentions." The others nodded. They had all been trained for this possibility, however remote it had seemed. Over the next hour, they watched as the alien ship settled into orbit directly above their outpost. Then, smaller craft began to descend toward the surface. "They're landing less than a mile from us," Susan said, her voice tense but controlled. Alan made a decision. "Susan, Greg, come with me. We'll go out to meet them. Everyone else stays here, ready to seal the base if necessary." 20 minutes later, the 3 humans stood on the Martian surface watching as 3 sleek ships touched down on the red soil. They were beautiful machines, smooth, silver, and completely unlike human designs. The ships opened, and out stepped the first aliens humanity would ever meet. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with bodies covered in flexible plates that looked like a mix between scales and armor. Their heads were elongated with no visible ears and 4 eyes spaced evenly around their skulls. "Remarkable," whispered Greg. "Completely non-humanoid." Alan stepped forward, hands raised in what he hoped was a universal sign of peace. "Welcome to Mars. We are humans from the planet Earth." The aliens conferred among themselves, making clicking and humming sounds. Then one stepped forward. It held up a small device that glowed blue. "We are Krellex," came a mechanical voice from the device. "This world is now under observation." Alan felt a surge of relief. They could communicate. "We're pleased to meet you. We have many questions." "Your questions are irrelevant," the translator device said. "You are primitive species 4728 in our catalog. We will study your settlement and collect samples." The 3 humans exchanged confused glances. This wasn't going as they had hoped. "We welcome scientific exchange," Alan said carefully. "But we need to establish some ground rules for—" The aliens simply walked past him as if he hadn't spoken. 2 of them headed directly toward the research base while the third began scanning the ground and air. "Excuse me," Alan called after them. "You can't just enter our base without permission." The Krellex ignored him completely. One of them picked up a piece of equipment that had been left outside and began disassembling it. Alan walked up to the alien. "That's sensitive equipment. Please put it down." The alien continued its work, not even acknowledging Alan's presence. "I think they don't see us as equals," Susan whispered. "They're treating us like we treat animals during field research." Alan frowned. "Well, we're not animals, and they need to understand that." He raised his voice. "Krelks, we insist you stop and speak with us before examining our base." The aliens continued to ignore them. One was now attempting to access the airlock to the main dome. "Greg, go back and warn the others," Alan said. "Tell them to secure the inner doors." Greg nodded and hurried back toward the base. The Krellex watched him go, but made no move to stop him. "What do they want?" Susan asked quietly. "Samples," Alan replied, "and I'm afraid they might mean us." His fears were confirmed moments later when 2 more Krellex emerged from their ships carrying what looked like containment units. They headed straight for Susan. "Stay behind me," Alan said, stepping in front of her. "Listen," He called to the approaching aliens. "We're willing to cooperate with your research, but you need to ask permission first." The Krelliks tried to move around him to reach Susan. Alan stepped sideways to block them again. "I said no," he stated firmly. "You will not take her or anyone else without consent." One of the Krelliks made a motion with its hand. The universal translator spoke. "Move aside. The female specimen will not be harmed. It will be returned after study." "She is not an it and not a specimen," Alan said, his patience wearing thin. "She is a sentient being with rights just like you." The Krelliks simply reached out to push Alan aside. He stood his ground. "I've asked you politely to stop," Alan said. "Multiple times now. I'm getting seriously annoyed now." Something changed in that moment. Alan later would find it hard to explain what happened, even to himself. A clarity came over him, a focused calm that felt almost supernatural. Time seemed to slow down. When the first Krelliks tried again to reach for Susan, Alan moved with unexpected speed. Despite the Krelliks being nearly a foot taller and presumably much stronger, Alan caught its arm and used its own momentum to flip it onto its back. The move was perfect, something Alan, who had no combat training, should not have been able to do. The second Krelliks came at him quickly. Alan ducked under its reach, grabbed a piece of equipment lying nearby, and used it to strike the alien's leg joint. The Krelliks went down hard. The third one pulled out what was clearly a weapon. Alan didn't hesitate. He threw a rock with perfect accuracy, knocking the device from the alien's hand. In less than 30 seconds, 3 Krelliks warriors lay on the Martian soil, disabled by a human scientist who had never been in a fight in his life. The remaining Krelliks backed away toward their ships, making high-pitched sounds that the translator didn't catch. They moved quickly, dragging their injured companions with them. Susan stared at Alan in shock. "How did you do that?" Alan looked down at his hands, equally surprised. "I have no idea. It just happened." Within minutes, the Krelliks' ships lifted, off from the surface and accelerated away from Mars, leaving only dust clouds as evidence they had ever been there. Later, when communications with Earth were restored, Alan filed a complete report about the encounter. But no one quite believed his account of how a middle-aged scientist had outfought 3 alien warriors. They assumed he was exaggerating out of pride or shock. What humanity didn't know was that the Krelliks were sending their own reports throughout the galaxy. Reports about a dangerous new species that underwent some kind of transformation when provoked. Reports that included a specific warning. If a human says, "I'm getting seriously annoyed now," prepare for combat or retreat immediately. Most species dismissed these reports as the embarrassed excuses of failed explorers. But a few older races remembered similar warnings from their own first encounters with humans. They began to wonder if there might be something to fear after all. Lieutenant Peter Garcia stood at attention, as Commander Zixnar of the Jacksphere assigned daily duties to the security teams on Sentinel Station. As usual, the human security personnel were given the least important tasks. Maintenance level patrols for Human Team 1, Cargo Bay inventory for Human Team 2, dock supervision for Team 3, Zixnar said without looking up from his display. Peter kept his face neutral, but inside he was seething. His team had the highest performance ratings on the station, yet they were always assigned to the lowest priority areas. Meanwhile, the Jacksphere and Fenari teams got all the critical security positions. "Sir, my team is qualified for Central Command security," Peter said. "We've completed all the required certifications." Commander Zixnar looked up, his 4 eyes narrowing. "Your certifications are noted, Lieutenant. Your assignments remain unchanged." "With respect, sir, this is the 3rd rotation where human teams have been kept from—" "Dismissed, Lieutenant," the commander interrupted. "Report to maintenance level with your team." Peter saluted stiffly and left the briefing room. In the ICE corridor, he met Sergeant Maria Diaz, his second in command. "Let me guess," Maria said. "Maintenance level again?" Peter nodded. "The commander doesn't think humans are ready for real security work." Even after we caught those smugglers last month? When the Fenari team missed them completely? Apparently that was just lucky timing, Peter said with a sigh. Come on, let's get the team moving. For the next 4 hours, Peter's team patrolled the maintenance level of Sentinel Station. It was boring, routine work, checking air filters, monitoring pressure gauges, and making sure the cleaning robots were functioning properly. Lieutenant Garcia, his comm unit crackled. Report to Security Hub immediately. Peter frowned. That was unusual. On my way, he replied. Diaz, take over here. When Peter reached the Security Hub, he found it in chaos. Alarms blared and officers from various species rushed about in apparent confusion. What's happening? He asked a passing Olmthak officer. Pirates, the Olmthak replied, all 6 eyes blinking rapidly. They've breached Docking Bay 7. Peter pushed his way through the crowd to find Commander Zixnar shouting orders. Secure the central ring. Move all civilians to the inner chambers. Peter studied the security displays. At least 3 pirate ships had attached themselves to different docking bays. Pirates were streaming in through multiple entry points. Commander, Peter said, they're using a dispersal strategy. If we pull all forces to the central ring, they'll take control of the outer sections. The commander barely glanced at him. This is standard Krell pirate tactics. We secure the command center. First, then push outward. Sir, these aren't Krell markings on their ships. Look at the design. Those are Vargon raiders. They use different tactics. I've fought pirates for 20 cycles, human. Return to your post. Peter didn't move. Sir, at least let my team secure Docking Bay 9. I think that's their main target. It connects directly to the station's supply depot. Your team is not qualified for combat operations, the commander snapped. Now leave before I have you removed. Peter stepped back, watching as the commander deployed all available forces to the central ring, leaving the outer sections vulnerable. Just as he feared, the security displays soon showed pirates gaining control of multiple outer areas with minimal resistance. Sir, Peter tried again. They're surrounding us. We need to deploy teams to break their encirclement. The commander ignored him, continuing to focus all efforts on the central ring. But it was becoming clear that his strategy wasn't working. The pirates were too many, and they were cutting off escape routes one by one. Casualties in Section 12, reported a Fenari officer. Medical teams can't reach them. Explosion in Cargo Bay 4, called another. Commander, Peter said urgently, we need to change tactics now or we'll lose the station. Commander Zixnar finally turned to him, mandibles clicking in anger. Your continued interruptions are noted, Lieutenant. One more word, and you'll be confined to quarters. Peter watched the security feeds as more areas of the station fell to the pirates. They were moving with purpose, securing specific sections rather than just causing chaos. This wasn't a random raid. They had a plan. He spotted something on one of the feeds. Pirates placing devices on key structural supports. Not explosives, but something else. They're trying to hijack the entire station, Peter realized aloud. Those are control node overrides. They'll take command of all systems. Impossible, the commander dismissed. Station systems can't be overridden that way. Human stations can't, Peter insisted. But Sentinel was built by the Jacksphere. Your systems are vulnerable to this type of attack. I studied it in tactical training. The commander turned away, issuing more orders to defend the central ring. More reports of casualties came in. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Peter made his decision. He activated his comm unit. Diaz, gather our team and any other human personnel. Meet me at Junction B14 in 5 minutes. Bring all available weapons. What about Commander Zixnar's orders? Maria asked. We're going to save this station whether he wants us to or not, Peter replied. Then he raised his voice so the commander could hear. Sir, I'm taking my team to counter the pirate. Control node attack. I'm getting seriously annoyed now. The commander spun around, alarm suddenly visible in all 4 eyes. What did you just say, human? But Peter was already moving, a strange clarity filling his mind. He could see the entire station layout in his head, could calculate exactly where the pirates would strike next. Within minutes, he had gathered his human security team and a few other human station workers who volunteered to help. 20 humans in total, against what seemed to be hundreds of pirates. "Listen up," Peter said, his voice calm and focused. "The pirates are placing control nodes at these 6 locations. We're going to split into teams and take them out simultaneously. Then we'll push to Docking Bay 7 and cut off their reinforcements." "Sir, that's impossible," one of the volunteers said. "There are too many of them." "Trust me," Peter replied with absolute confidence. "I know exactly how to do this." And somehow he did. Peter coordinated the human teams with perfect precision. They moved through the station like shadows, avoiding main corridors and using maintenance tunnels the pirates hadn't secured. At each target location, they struck swiftly and effectively. Peter himself led the team to the main control node, taking down 8 pirates without a single casualty on his side. His combat skills were suddenly beyond anything he had shown before. Each move perfectly timed, each shot finding its mark. Within 40 minutes, all 6 control nodes had been disabled. Peter then led a direct assault on Docking Bay 7, where the main pirate force was staged. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, the humans secured the bay and cut off the pirates' escape route. Taken by surprise and suddenly finding themselves trapped, the remaining pirates surrendered. The entire operation was over in less than 2 hours. When Peter returned to the security hub, he found Commander Zixnar and the other alien officers staring at him in shock. "How did you do that?" the commander asked, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. Peter shrugged. "We saw the problem and fixed it, that's all." But as he filed his report later, Peter couldn't fully explain his own actions. How had he known exactly where each control node would be? How had he fought with skills he'd never displayed in training? Something had changed when he reached that breaking point of frustration, something he couldn't quite understand. What he didn't know was that recordings of his remarkable performance were already being shared among the station's alien crew, another incident of a human saying those specific words and then performing beyond all normal capabilities. In a secure communication room, an Ulnthak intelligence officer sent an encrypted message to his homeworld. "Third confirmed case. Identical. Trigger phrase. Identical performance enhancement. Humans remain unaware of the phenomenon. Recommend immediate research priority." Dr. Olivia Parker adjusted her lab coat and looked at the samples laid out before her. For 3 years, she had been studying the differences between human stress responses and those of other galactic species. Today was supposed to be the day she finally presented her findings to the Zithrai Council of Science. "They're ready for you, Dr. Parker," said her assistant, Ben Lewis. He looked nervous, which only added to Olivia's own anxiety. "How many council members are present?" she asked, gathering her data tablets. "All 7, Ben replied. "And they've invited observers from 3 other species." Olivia nodded. That was unusual, and not a good sign. The Zithrai rarely invited observers unless they planned to make an example of someone. "Let's go then," she said, trying to sound confident. The presentation chamber was large and circular, with raised seating that made Olivia feel like she was on trial rather than giving a scientific presentation. The 7 Zithrai council members sat in the highest positions. They were tall, thin beings with pale skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Below them sat representatives from the Ulnthak, the Voxtari, and another species Olivia didn't recognize. "Dr. Olivia Parker of Earth," announced the lead counselor Cottrell. "You may present your research on comparative stress physiology." Olivia stepped to the center of the room and activated her display. "Thank you, honored council. My research focuses on how different species respond physiologically to stress stimuli." For the next 20 minutes, she presented her data, showing how various alien species shared similar stress patterns despite their different biologies. Heart rates increased, thinking became less rational, fight-or-flight responses activated. However, she continued, humans show some unusual variations in their stress response. She displayed a series of brain scans and hormone level charts. While initial responses are similar, humans sometimes exhibit what I call a clarity threshold, when stress continues beyond a certain point. The council members stirred uncomfortably. Cottrell leaned forward. "What exactly do you mean by clarity threshold, Dr. Parker?" "In most species, Extended stress leads to diminished cognitive function, Olivia explained. But in some human subjects, we've documented cases where cognitive function actually improves after a certain stress duration. Decision-making becomes more effective, physical coordination enhances, and— "This research is flawed," interrupted Counselor Venshar. "Your sample size is too small, and your methodology fails to account for individual variations." Olivia blinked in surprise. "I've tested over 200 subjects from 12 species. The statistical significance is well established." "The Zithrai Council has reviewed your preliminary findings," Catrell said, "and we find them unconvincing. Your funding will be redirected to more promising research." "But you haven't seen all the evidence," Olivia protested. "I've documented clear neurochemical pathways that—" "The decision is made," Catrell said firmly. "Your research grant is terminated, effective immediately." Olivia looked at the observers. The Olmthak representative was watching her with unusual intensity. She had the strange feeling that they were waiting for something. "Counselors, please," she tried again. "This research has implications for interspecies medicine. If we understand how stress affects different physiologies, we can develop better treatments for—" "Your time is up, Dr. Parker," Catrell said. "Please gather your materials and vacate the research facility by the end of the day." For 3 years, she had worked on this project. 3 years of careful research, meticulous documentation, and sleepless nights, and now they were dismissing it without even reviewing her full findings. "May I ask why?" Olivia said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "What is the scientific basis for rejecting my research?" The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Venshar spoke. "Human research on stress responses is not a priority for galactic medicine. Your species is too new, too different. The applications would be limited." It was a lie, and Olivia knew it. Her research had broad applications for all species. Something else was happening here. For 2 more hours, Olivia argued her case. She presented additional data, cited supporting research, and explained the potential benefits. The council remained unmoved, growing increasingly dismissive with each attempt. Finally, after being interrupted for the 20th time, Olivia fell silent. She stood in the center of the chamber looking at the council members who had already turned to discussing other matters as if she wasn't there. Something shifted inside her. A calm certainty replaced her frustration. She took a deep breath and said quietly, "I'm getting seriously annoyed now." The effect was electric. Every council member froze. The observers leaned forward, suddenly alert. "Did she just—" whispered one of the Zithrai. Olivia didn't wait for their reaction. With perfect clarity, she began to speak. Her mind made connections between research points she hadn't consciously realized before. She explained complex neurochemical pathways without referencing her notes. Her speech flowed with a precision and eloquence that surprised even her. For 45 minutes, she delivered what amounted to a revolutionary lecture on cross-species medicine. She identified patterns that had eluded researchers for decades and proposed treatment protocols that could work across different physiologies. The council members sat in stunned silence. The observers were recording everything. When she finally finished, no one spoke for several long seconds. Then the Olmthak observer stood up. "The Council for Interspecies Medical Research will fund Dr. Parker's work directly," he announced. "We request that she be given full laboratory access and additional resources." Catrell seemed about to object, then thought better of it. "Of course, the Zithrai Council recognizes the unexpected value of this research." Later, as Olivia was gathering her materials, she noticed the Olmthak observer watching her from the doorway. "That was quite impressive, Dr. Parker," he said. "I am Teklin's Special Scientific Attaché." "Thank you for your support," Olivia replied, "though I'm not sure why you intervened." Teklin's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "Let's just say your research aligns with certain investigations already underway." "What investigations?" "Tell me, Dr. Parker," Teklin said instead of answering. "Have you ever noticed anything unusual about human performance under specific stress conditions?" "That's what my entire presentation was about," Olivia said, confused. Yes, but I mean personally. Have you ever experienced a moment when frustration or stress suddenly gave way to unusual clarity or ability? Olivia thought about what had just happened in the council chamber. I'm not sure. Interesting, Tech Lin said. You're not even aware of it. Before Olivia could ask what he meant, the Ontak handed her a data chip. This contains research funding authorization and laboratory access codes. It also includes some data you might find interesting, records of certain human performance, incidents that match your clarity threshold theory. What kind of incidents? Diplomatic negotiations, security operations, first contact situations, Tech Lin said. All involving humans who reached what you might call a breaking point of frustration and then demonstrated remarkable abilities. That's not possible, Olivia said. My research indicates the clarity threshold is rare, occurring in less than 5% of subjects. Perhaps the trigger is specific, Tech Lin suggested. A particular emotional state, or even a verbal cue. As the Ontak left, Olivia examined the data chip, curiosity overriding her confusion. What she found there would change her understanding of human physiology forever. Hidden within the station's systems, automatic sensors recorded everything that had happened. The Ontak weren't the only ones watching. Throughout the station, word spread of another human who had spoken the phrase and then performed beyond all normal expectations. In secure facilities across the galaxy, researchers from a dozen species began compiling data on what they now called the human annoyance phenomenon. 10 years had passed since Dr. Olivia Parker's breakthrough presentation. The galaxy had changed in that time, and so had humanity's place in it. Ambassador Kate Nelson straightened her formal diplomatic uniform as she prepared to enter the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. After serving as Earth's representative for 3 years, she was used to the elaborate ceremonies of interstellar politics. But today was special. The centennial gathering of all council species, held once every 100 years. Ready, Ambassador? Asked her aide, Frank Cooper, a young man fresh from Earth's diplomatic academy. As ready as I'll ever be, Kate replied with a smile. Remember, no sudden movements around the Voxtari delegation, and don't look directly at the Zithrai for more than a few seconds. Frank nodded nervously. There are so many rules. How do you keep them all straight? Practice, Kate said. And the knowledge that one wrong move could create an interstellar incident. The massive doors to the grand chamber slid open, revealing a vast circular room filled with representatives from over 40 intelligent species. Some were humanoid, others completely alien in form. Some floated in special atmosphere tanks, while others were merely holograms projected from worlds too distant to travel from. Kate moved confidently to the human section, nodding respectfully to the alien delegations she passed. Frank followed closely, trying not to stare at the more unusual beings. Ambassador Nelson greeted the Ontak representative Sevtel. Earth's voice is welcome at this gathering. Thank you, Representative Sevtel, Kate replied with the traditional six-eyed blink that the Ontak appreciated. Humanity is honored to participate. It hadn't always been this way. When Kate first became ambassador, the older species had barely acknowledged humans. But over the past decade, attitudes had shifted dramatically. Now humans were treated with a respect that seemed out of proportion to their brief time on the galactic stage. The Supreme Counselor, a Fenari named Zinlal, called the gathering to order. We welcome all sentient species to this centennial council. Today we share knowledge and strengthen the bonds between our civilizations. For the next several hours, representatives discussed trade agreements, territorial disputes, and scientific cooperation. Kate noticed that whenever humans spoke, the chamber fell unusually quiet, as if everyone was paying extra attention. During a brief recess, Frank whispered to her, "Is it just me, or do they seem nervous around us?" "Not nervous exactly," Kate said thoughtfully. "More like cautious respect." After the recess, the Supreme Counselor announced a special presentation. The Joint Species Research Initiative has completed its decade-long study of comparative physiology. Dr. Teklin of the Olnthak will present their findings. Kate sat up straighter. She knew this project had something to do with humans, though the details had been kept secret. Dr. Teklin stepped to the center of the chamber. His 6 eyes swept the room before he spoke. Distinguished representatives, our research has focused on an unusual phenomenon observed in one of our newer member species, humans. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing brain scans, hormone level charts, and video recordings. Most species in our galaxy evolved on worlds with relatively stable conditions, Teklin explained. Their stress responses developed to handle specific threats in predictable environments. However, Earth is unusual, a planet of extreme environmental variations and rapid climate shifts. Kate watched as the displays showed Earth's violent weather patterns, tectonic activity, and dramatic seasonal changes. Humans evolved in this chaotic environment, Teklin continued. Their stress response system had to adapt not just to immediate threats, but to prolonged challenge and constant change. The displays now showed human brain activity under various conditions. In most species, extended stress impairs cognitive function. Fight-or-flight responses override higher reasoning. But humans develop something unique, what we've termed the adaptive clarity response. Video recordings began playing on the displays. Kate recognized some of them. Jack Miller during the Vox-Tari negotiations, Lieutenant Garcia during the pirate attack, Dr. Parker at her presentation. In each case, the human spoke the same phrase, "I'm getting seriously annoyed now," and then performed remarkably. When humans reach a specific frustration threshold, Teklin explained, their brains don't shut down higher functions like other species. Instead, they enter a state of heightened performance. Mental processing improves. Physical coordination enhances. Problem-solving abilities increase dramatically. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative focused on the presentation. "This is not random," Teklin said. "Our research shows that humans unknowingly developed a cultural warning mechanism. The phrase, 'I'm getting seriously annoyed now' serves as both a self-trigger for this response and a warning to others that a performance shift is imminent." Kate blinked in surprise. She had used that phrase herself occasionally, but had never noticed anything unusual happening. Afterward, furthermore, Teklin continued, humans are completely unaware of this ability. They don't realize they're activating a specialized evolutionary response. They simply experience a moment of clarity and improved function, with no understanding of why. The Supreme Counselor stepped forward. In light of these findings, the Council has voted to recognize the human phrase, "I'm getting seriously annoyed now," as a protected cultural statement under galactic law. All species are advised to treat this statement as a final diplomatic warning before a human enters an enhanced performance state. Kate nearly laughed out loud. A common human expression of frustration was now enshrined in galactic law. It seemed absurd. After the session ended, representatives from various species approached Kate with new respect. Some even seemed a bit nervous around her. "I don't understand," Frank whispered. "Is this why aliens have been treating humans differently lately?" "Apparently," Kate said, still processing the information. "They think we have some kind of superpower that activates when we get frustrated." "But do we?" Frank asked. "I mean, I've never noticed anything like that. Who knows?" Kate shrugged. "Maybe it's just that humans work better under pressure. Or maybe we're more stubborn than other species when pushed too far." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Kate noticed a young Zithrai diplomat had taken her reserved seat and was using her personal data terminal. "Excuse me," she said politely. "That's my station." The Zithrai ignored her, continuing to use the terminal. "I need to access my files," Kate said, a bit more firmly. "Could you please move to your own section?" Still no response. The Zithrai continued working as if she hadn't spoken. Kate was about to call security when she remembered the presentation. A smile slowly spread across her face. "I'm getting seriously annoyed now," she said clearly. The effect was immediate. The entire chamber fell silent. Every alien within earshot froze and turned to watch. The Zithrai diplomat jumped up from the seat as if it had suddenly become hot. gathering his things with frantic haste. "My deepest apologies, Ambassador Nelson," he said, backing away. "A terrible misunderstanding. Please forgive the intrusion." As Kate took her seat, she noticed Frank staring at her with wide eyes. "Did you feel anything?" he whispered. "Any special powers activating?" Kate laughed. "Not a thing. But apparently I don't need them anymore." She gestured around at the chamber, where dozens of aliens were still watching her cautiously. Sometimes reputation is power enough. As word spread throughout the galaxy about the official recognition of the human ability, a new saying became common among alien species. No species ignores a human when they say, "I'm getting seriously annoyed now." Whether the human response was truly a unique evolutionary adaptation or simply the power, a belief didn't matter. The effect was the same. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not through force or technology, but through a simple phrase that had somehow become the most respected warning in the known universe.